Now, what is provisioning? So coming back to the example of, let's say we have to onboard Zoom. So when we have to onboard Zoom, we have to create that pipeline that we were talking about. Like the pipeline is there, but you have to provision Zoom into that pipeline, right? So there are a bunch of things that have to be done. Some of the things are you have to create like the setup in Snowflake. Now, what is a setup? You have to create things like warehouse, you have to create a database, you have to create schemas, a bunch of things. So the code takes care of that. Then the code takes care of creating like the connectors. So it has to create the Debezium connector. It has to create the Snowflake connector so that the data flows from MySQL into Snowflake, right? And then there are, after data has come into Snowflake, you have to do a bunch of transformations. Remember I said we have a concept of business objects, right? Like account, invoice, subscription. Now what is there in the database is not the business objects. You have the raw tables. Like I said, the raw tables have to be joined to create the business object. So what gets transferred over here is the raw tables. It will be, for example, ZB underscore billing underscore account. It's not the account object. So that transformations have to happen. So the piece Zoom that you will work on is, we have like there is again open source Airflow DAGs which can be run to build these transformations. We have all that in place, but we have not hooked into like an API where that when you call that API, it will do all the setup in Snowflake, create the connectors, and then call the DAGs. That piece has not been done. Right now we go and call another API to like trigger the DAGs. We just want to like hook into the main API so that it's like, I have a single click and then everything happens in one shot. And Hari, what you're doing is also part of that same thing, right? So
yeah.
the provision call, we have the CDC connector that is created, but not the snapshot. So once you put in your snapshot piece, which should work the way we are expecting it to work, as in like it should be doing the filtering parts. And if Zoom comes and does the DAG part, then we now have a single API. When you call it, it will create the entire setup and what I call turn on the pipe to get the data flowing from the source to the sink.
Sorry, I have a quick question. So the raw data will go from like the source to the sink, and then where will the API working? Like from the data in Snowflake, or?
So good question. So what we have is like, now where is the API? We have our one service running Snowflake ingestion, right? Which is what you guys are trying to set up. Snowflake ingestion. So basically an API is exposed by the service. So this service you can think of as the orchestrator, right? You call an API against the service and then it does all the job of setting up things over here. How does it set up, right? Snowflake exposes like JDBC call. So you can just call the Snowflake APIs to like create the database, the warehouse, the user. There are a bunch of things, right? So everything you can trigger against Snowflake from the service. Now over here, it is Kafka and Kafka Connect. So it exposes, so Kafka Connect exposes again Kafka Connect API. So which is what you call from the service to like start the pipeline or set up the connectors. Make sense? So now the question that you are asking is the DAGs, right? So the DAGs are something again, so again, we have another surface, we have the Snowflake ingestion, and then we have, what is that other one?
NoHub transforms, Airflow.
So there is another project called SnowHub Transforms, and there is yet another one called Metamorph. I'll kind of write that down also. Metamorph. So this project has, this is where it has the integration. So Zoom, maybe read a little bit about Airflow and DAGs. So this has all the Airflow and the DAG related stuff. So this has all the transformations that need to get happen. I'll talk about the transformations and I'll show you, right? But this has the logic to do all the transformations, and it has like, you can schedule it as well, right? But bottom line, what we want is as part of this orchestration, like how this guy is orchestrating, hey, create the setup in Snowflake, create the connectors, start the pipeline. I also wanted to tell this guy that, hey, go trigger the transformations.
Okay.
Does that make sense? At a high level, we'll get in more in depth. But it is like this guy is just orchestrating. So this provision API, it is orchestrating step 1, a step 2, 3, 4, and it just has to orchestrate a step 3 or 5 over there as well.
Okay. So that will, like, the transform part